Today I'm going to be talking about INFJ with ESFJ and what the chemistry can look like there. I have had a ton of experience with ESFJ, which makes sense because it's one of the more commonly found Myers-Briggs types. In fact, it may be the most common. It's definitely up there within the top 4 for sure. I have had interactions, and I mean intimate interactions with ESFJs in a variety of different contexts. I have had an ESFJ client. I've worked with ESFJs. I have had ESFJs when I talk about work. I've had coworkers as ESFJs. I have had managers, bosses, supervisors as ESFJs. I've had friends as ESFJs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about INFJ and ESFJ, what that looks like under the variety of those different contexts, because they're all a bit different, okay? So my client that I had that was an ESFJ, I've only ever had one. By the way, if you're interested, out of all of the clients I've ever had, and I have had many, I have only ever had one client that was a sensing Myers-Briggs type, and that was this ESFJ. So she was a 1 with a 2 wing, ESFJ. In trying to do life coaching with her was, as an INFJ, I, again, am assessing problems from an introverted, intuitive perspective. And so I'm seeing everything that can't be seen. I hear what you're not saying, if that makes sense. And ESFJs, because they're sensing types, see their problems as face value problems. They're things that are happening right now. And when you're a sensing type and you go to a life coach or a counselor, I've found that what they want is a specific thing to do right now that makes the problem go away. And as an INFJ, that's a weaker area for me. One of the things that I've had to develop in myself as I do life coaching and then as I go on to do counseling and things of that nature is having the ability to teach them the abstract concepts and extrapolate things that can be done, actual actions that can be done based on an abstract understanding of the situation or the person or the relationship or what have you. So that's a skill that I've been working on to make myself more helpful to those who are sensing types. The client that I had that was a 1 ESFJ, we ran into this problem absolutely all the time. And actually, I have a family member that's an ESFJ. She did this too. It's like they come to me for advice or just a different perspective. They want me to help them solve a problem. And so I'm an INFJ, and I give them the abstract overview of what the problem is, which is very different than what they see as their problem. And they're having a very hard time piecing together what I'm saying and how that could have anything to do with what their actual day-to-day problem looks like, okay? And so the problem that I was having in a life coaching setting was, it was like I would offer her this perspective and she just couldn't see it. Again, without intending to belittle anybody, it was almost kind of like she had this deer in headlights look. I would offer her this introverted, intuitive perspective, and she was kind of like, what? You know, she couldn't get it. You know what I mean? My best friend has an expression that she uses to explain the differences between the sensing function and the intuitive function. She likes to say that the sensors can't see the forest for the trees and the intuitives can't see the trees for the forest. And it was a case. In trying to explain to this client what a forest was, I was losing her because all that she understood was a tree. And she needed me to help her navigate this tree, but I couldn't do that because all I see is a forest. Does that make sense? And so there was a disconnect there. Another disconnect that we had, and I talked about this in my video about ESTJs, is ESFJs are, again, one of the types that have a box. They've got they have introverted sensing supporting their extroverted feeling. And so they have in their mind the way that things are. And when you present something that's outside of that box, it can be anxiety producing for them sometimes, and it's hard for them to really take in. Now, the difference is when you have an ESTJ has no problem cutting you out, if that makes sense. They don't really, it's not that they don't care about your feelings, but they care more about the function of things than they do about how you're going to feel about the process. And so if you or the perspective that you offer, the way that you do things fits outside of the box, an ESTJ is just going to cut you out. You're not there. You're dead weight. Goodbye. An ESFJ is leading with extroverted feeling. So they're going to be the ones that are really polite, and they're not going to call you out, or they're not going to disagree because they don't want to rock the boat. They want to maintain harmony in your relationship. So they just kind of smile and nod very politely, and they listen, but they're not necessarily taking in the perspective that you're offering that's different from theirs, especially if it's a very radical perspective. And this client, her background was a very fundamentalist Christian background. And at the time that she started to see me, I had already really started to move away from my fundamentalist Christian background, and I had taken on some more liberal views. I was in the process really of converting to where I'm at right now, which is a standpoint of agnosticism, not necessarily a religion anymore, but just a different philosophy about a higher power, so to speak. And my opinions about things have changed. The way that I express myself has changed, especially since discovering the Enneagram and my type. And I've worked so much through a lot of what I like to call my sick shit. So I've become a very bold, outspoken, liberal person. And she, being an ESFJ, didn't appreciate that, because I think being an intuitive person and then being a very analytical head type, like a type 6, and then on top of that, being a very bold liberal person as I am today, all of those things were just kind of rocking her very fundamentalist Christian boat. But again, she's got that extroverted feeling function, so she's not necessarily going to outwardly disagree with me. She just does the whole smile and nod and tries to keep the relationship very friendly, and she did. Now, on top of this, again, she was also a 1 with a 2 wing, so she was very set, very black and white set in that fundamentalist Christian perspective. And it not just necessarily her Christian perspective, but her experience that she had through life leading up to that point, and the unconscious beliefs and messages that she got from those experiences. Those things were put in stone for her. Her worldview was shaped by those experiences. And so here I come, this intuitive, very analytical person who's very liberal and is trying to offer her perspectives that challenge what she believes to be true in order to give her an opportunity to grow, because that's how you grow. And she is feeling a lot of anxiety about that because it's violating everything that she knows, and she is in that black and white thinking standpoint, and she doesn't know how to get herself in the box. She doesn't even know she's in a box. So we made a little progress with things. She did really, really well when I could give her like life hacks, tips, things to do. Okay, this is a problem, so tomorrow try doing it this way and see what happens. Those things were very helpful to her, but we didn't really do much in the way of personal growth. For example, not a lot of in-depth stuff went on there, okay? I also want to say this. That has a lot to do with ESFJs having an inferior introverted thinking function. Bless their hearts, they just get so wrapped up in their emotional perspective is a way to say it, but more importantly than that, they tend to get very wrapped up in their value system. Is really more about a value system, and it's about understanding the external value systems that other people have and how you can incorporate that value system with your own and keep everything connected in such a way that everyone is happy and the value system isn't being violated. In other words, it's kind of like there's this value system. How can I include other people in the value system and make sure that everybody's happy and that there is overall harmony and connectedness? And sometimes really the harmony and connectedness is the value system for ESFJs, right? They're going to have underlying parts to that come from the introverted sensing function that supports them. That's going to draw a lot on background, okay? And those add kind of some sprinkles to their little cupcake value system, if you will. So that was an example with my client. I mentioned earlier I had one relationship with an ESFJ that went really south. And this ESFJ was a family member. She is a 2 with a 1 wing ESFJ. She was hurt that after I got married, we grew apart. She and I were closer than I was even to my own sister. In fact, growing up, I really considered her as a sister more so than my actual sister. And so we had a very close-knit relationship, and that relationship meant the world to her. And I got married and we just kind of drifted apart. And it wasn't anything intentional. It's just part of life. You get married, you have kids, and she has never been married, never had kids. And so those two life circumstances are so incredibly different and they change you. And so you're going to drift apart. That's natural. It's just the way of life. She didn't know how to handle that. She's a 2. She has been investing all of this energy into our relationship for her entire life. She was the initiator. Most of the time, text messages, phone calls, hangouts, let's get together and do this. She initiated all that. It was great. I didn't have to worry about it. And so she's doing all of this, all of this, all of this, all of this. I'm not reciprocating back to her in the same way. She's starting to feel a sense of bitterness and resentment towards me, and she doesn't even really know she's feeling it. Or I should say, she knows that she's feeling it, but she puts it down because she feels bad that she's feeling it, especially because she's a 2 with a 1 wing. She'll feel that sense of bitterness and resentment and immediately stuff it down because it's not okay for her to feel that way. That's not appropriate. She needs to be more understanding and more tolerant of me. And this is going to be exacerbated by the fact that she's an ESFJ. On top of that, she wants to keep harmony with everybody. She's trying to be true to her value system. She wants to make sure that she and I are going to be okay. So, and actually even then we could add to it, supported by the introverted sensing function. That's how she was raised. You need to be polite to people. We don't exclude anybody. We overlook the differences in the things that people do because we're Christians and we want to be kind people. And so she has been taught her entire life and has been functioning in such a way that she puts everybody first, even to the detriment of herself. Then she feels bitterness and resentment towards the other people. And she represses that because she's been taught that's what she's supposed to do. And it just keeps the cycle going. So what wound up happening was, as I went through my divorce process, out of that sense of bitterness and resentment that she had for me, she had devised a plan to help my ex-husband. It was a very detailed, contrived thing, but she had devised a plan to attempt to help my ex-husband get full custody of our daughter. And the reasoning that she gave for that, this is directly from her words, is that she was so hurt that I grew apart and I didn't do anything to try to save our relationship or salvage our relationship. And this was her way of getting back at me. It was her way of hurting her the same way that she hurt me. Now, I will say this. This tends to be, it's a 2 thing for sure. This is what 2s do when they are very unaware of the self and they're just kind of lost in this ego that they have, this 2 ego, okay? It's an unfortunate reality, but it's what they do. And this is going to lead me to my next point that I've noticed about ESFJs. They look just so adorably sweet and kind, and they kind of have this doormat quality about them, if you will, on the outside. I have learned through experience that you do not mess with those motherfuckers. They're so funny because they're so nice and friendly and warm and welcoming and accepting. And we just take that for granted. But they have a line. And when you cross the line, they're like forces to be reckoned with. I am amazed at kind of the fierceness that comes out in ESFJs when you cross the line. I've seen it in the ESFJs that I've worked with. Specifically, I had one manager at the last job that I had, which was at a spa. I had a couple of managers. They would rotate in and out. One of them was an ESFJ. She was a 3 ESFJ. By the way, the majority of the ESFJs that I've known in my life have been 3s. I've known one ESFJ, a 2 ESFJ. Every other ESFJ that I've ever known has been a 3. Just so you know, I don't know if you care. Statistics. So the manager that I had at the spa, she was a 3 ESFJ, and we were always talking about how she would come across as being this very accepting person, to the point that she would let people walk all over her. She would just kind of make less of herself so that other people could be more of who they were. And the more that we got to work with her, the more that we found out that that's not the case. I mean, it is up to a point, but you cross the line, and she got nasty. And it wasn't so much anger problems. We never really saw her get angry. I'll say this. With an ESTJ, when you cross the line, they get angry, okay? With an ESFJ, when you cross the line, I mean, they feel anger, but what you see is manipulation. An ESTJ will feel violated by you, and they'll look you in the face and say, fuck you, and you're done. An ESFJ will feel violated by you, and they'll look you in the face and they'll smile and they'll say, I love you, I'll see you again next week. And behind the scenes, they are manipulating things in such a way. Unfortunately, I've seen it done with the intent to harm. Other times, it's not even really that. Sometimes it just turns into gossiping about you behind your back, and that gossip can lead to problems that you have with other people who get the wrong impression of you because they're listening to something that's given from the perspective of a hurt ESFJ. But they're very good at retaliating by relationally and socially manipulating things. So when they get really vindictive, that's what they do. So you've got to watch out for that. They're very, very sly that way. And you don't see it coming until it broadsides you with its full effect. So in other words, they're doing all of this social and relational manipulation behind your back, and you're not going to have any idea it's happening until the consequences of that manipulation just bam, hit you. And you're kind of like, oh, fuck, I was being manipulated this entire time, or certain things were being contrived against me this entire time, and I'm just now finding out about it, and it's this giant clusterfuck kind of a thing. That's the experience that I've had with ESFJs that have felt violated by me, or ESFJs that have felt, I don't know, they've had their anxiety stirred up by me, because again, I'm a very countercultural person. I'm not afraid to hurt feelings if I have to. I don't want to. I really try to avoid it. But I mean, I'm going to stand up for what I believe is right. I'm going to defend facts. And if my value system is different from their value system, that can be very threatening to them. And especially when I defend facts over feelings, that is completely anxiety producing for them. They do not like that. I've never been in an instance where that's been received well by an ESFJ. So it's kind of funny, because it's like they're these little teddy bears, and then snap, they're these fire-breathing dragons, and you never see it coming. And that was the case with one of the managers that I had, my 3 ESFJ manager that I had at the spa. I have a friend that's a 3 ESFJ. Same thing with her. Really, really nice. You cross the line and she's done being nice. I have another friend who's a male ESFJ. Those are really rare. Same thing with him. Really, really nice. He will give you the shirt off of his back. And when you cross the line, you're dead to him. He gets pretty nasty pretty quick. You'll see a temper come out there. The Relational, emotional, social manipulation, I have found, tends to be more with the female ESFJs that I've known. Again, I've only really ever had intimate experience with one male ESFJ. He doesn't do the relational, social manipulation tactic. He just gets mean. He's just flat out mean. It can get really personal. I have found that the things that tend to produce anxiety with ESFJs are when you step outside of the box, when you make waves or you're rocking the boat. In other words, whenever you are behaving in such a way or saying things that they fear may create discord for another person, that's very anxiety producing for them. When you pose a risk to their reputation, that's very anxiety producing for them. That's especially the case with the threes that I've known who are ESFJs. So to sum up, my relationship, the INFJ ESFJ relationship, has been, in my experience, a really easy one. I don't have to work at it. It's very rare that I cross the line with the ESFJs. And when I do, again, they tolerate it for a little while because they don't want to hurt my feelings. They don't want to create discord or to rock the boat. So for the most part, I can kind of tell when I cross the line with them sometimes, because I'm an INFJ. That introverted intuitive function supported by the extroverted feeling function makes me very good at reading people. So I can kind of tell when I have stepped outside of the box and created an anxiety for them without them having to tell me. But you know, for the most part, there can be just a general awkwardness there. They don't show it, but I feel it, and they don't know I'm feeling it. I don't have a lot of problems with them. I found that I can't have the type of intimate relationships with them that I want to have because I can't get that introverted, intuitive function engaged in that relationship the way that I want it to. I can connect on an extroverted feeling level, but there's a degree of shallowness there for me. I really need to be able to get my introverted intuitive function into a relationship with somebody and be able to actively use it with that person in order for me to feel like I've got a degree of intimacy that's meaningful for me. And I have a hard time doing that with ESFJs. The introverted intuitive function and the introverted sensing function could not be further from. Anyways, that's a little bit about the INFJ and the ESFJ chemistry.